Welcome to Blackman Folktales. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Faith, and if there's one truth that has shaped every breath I take, it's that my sister Gloria saved my life long before I even understood what survival meant. Our beginning wasn't just hard. It was cruel, sharp-edged, and unforgiving. We were born into modest means in a small town in eastern Nigeria. Life was simple but sweet, until it wasn't. I was barely 10 when tragedy struck, and Gloria, only 18, was thrust into a role no teenager should ever bear. Our parents died in a suspicious car crash along the Ibadan Expressway, an accident the police quickly brushed aside. But Gloria knew better. She'd overheard whispers before the funeral. Our father's younger brother, Uncle Ajike, had always coveted Papa's land and money. Without a legal will, he made his move swiftly, forging documents, bribing local chiefs, and dispossessing us of everything we owned. In less than 2 weeks, we went from a loving home to sleeping on flattened cartons in a corridor behind a carpenter's shop. The world, it seemed, had turned its back on us. But my sister didn't. Gloria was born with a lion's heart. Even in the middle of our grief, she became a mother, a protector, and a provider, all in one. She refused to let poverty swallow us. She hawked pure water in traffic, cleaned church halls at dawn, and sold second-hand clothes in the scorching sun, all while shielding me from the ugliness of it all. At night, she would hum lullabies to me, hiding her hunger behind a smile and giving me the last bite of food. I once caught her sewing the sole of her worn slippers with a safety pin, tears silently slipping down her cheeks. That was the night I understood sacrifice, not from a textbook, but from watching her silently bleed dignity for my sake. She refused to let me beg. "You will go to school, Faith," she'd whisper fiercely, clutching me tight, "even if I have to crawl to pay your fees." And she meant it. Against every odd, Gloria enrolled in a polytechnic, working odd jobs during the day and studying through candlelight at night. I marveled at her strength. She would return home with cracked fingers and aching bones, only to kneel by my side and help me with my homework. She was exhausted, always, but never too tired to love me. Years later, Gloria defied every statistic and graduated top of her class with a first-class degree in petroleum engineering. That graduation day was surreal. She borrowed a graduation gown, wore a donated pair of shoes that pinched her toes, and stepped onto that convocation stage with grace so regal that the entire auditorium stood in applause. People clapped for her not because they knew her story, but because something about her exuded power. She wept silently that night, not out of pride, but out of relief that her suffering had not been in vain. Fortune smiled on her when she got recruited by a prestigious oil firm in Port Harcourt within months. We moved into a modest flat with real walls, real beds, and for the first time, real peace. For me, the nightmare was finally over. But for Gloria, something still gnawed at her soul. The poverty might have left her bank account, but it had left scars on her spirit. Despite her success, Gloria's personal life remained barren of joy. She was beautiful, radiantly so, with deep brown eyes that held 1,000 stories. Yet every man who came into her life saw her as a temporary conquest. They were drawn to her success, yes, but intimidated by her strength. They'd shower her with compliments, make lofty promises, and disappear once they'd gotten what they wanted. The worst of them was a suave older man, Victor, who swept her off her feet with poetry, candlelit dinners, and fairy tale lies. For 2 years, Gloria trusted him. He claimed to be a widower, introduced her to his niece, and even talked about buying land together. I remember the way her eyes lit up whenever he texted her. For once, she let her guard down. Until the day she stumbled upon a wedding invitation addressed to Victor and his niece, whose real name was Amaka, his legal wife. Gloria was shattered. She screamed that night. Threw everything he ever gave her into the fire. She didn't eat for days. She barely spoke. And when she finally rose from that darkness, something in her had died. She buried her hopes of love and never looked back. "Maybe I'm cursed," she said one night as I tried to comfort her. "Maybe love isn't meant for women like me." I didn't have the words then to argue. I just held her tightly and cried with her, silently cursing every man who'd used her pain as their playground. From that day on, Gloria became emotionally unreachable. Men tried, but she never let anyone close again. Her walls were steel, her heart locked in a vault of self-preservation. But even then, she never stopped giving. She poured all her love into me, funding my education, attending every school event, and cheering me on even when her own dreams were quietly dying. People often called her cold or too serious, but they didn't know her story. They didn't see the nights she wept when she thought no one was watching. They didn't hear the prayers she whispered, not for a husband or for wealth, but for me, to succeed, to love, and to live a life she never had. Gloria was the sun in my sky, and I vowed that if ever life gave me the power to return the love she gave me, I would do so with everything in me. What I didn't know then was that fate, though late, was still writing her story, and when it finally arrived, love would knock not gently, but with a bang. Life began to take a different shape when I gained admission into the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. As always, Gloria was the wind beneath my wings. She paid my acceptance fees, bought all my supplies, and rented a small off-campus apartment for me. She insisted I never stay in the school hostel. Too rough, she said, and she wanted me comfortable. Every holiday, I came home to a bigger, more sophisticated version of our home. Gloria had moved up at work and now had a senior role at the oil firm. But no matter how high she rose, she never stopped checking my notes or frying plantains when I visited. It was during my second year that I met Daniel. He was everything Gloria had warned me about, yet everything I thought I wanted. White, soft-spoken, patient, and a doctor. He was volunteering at a local medical outreach when we bumped into each other. I remember the butterflies, the warm way he looked at me like I was made of magic. When he asked for my number, I gave it reluctantly, but that reluctance faded by the end of our first call. Before long, we were inseparable. Gloria was skeptical. She watched Daniel like a hawk, silently observing, warning, and probing. "Don't let smooth talk confuse you," she once said as we sat on the veranda. "The devil doesn't always wear rags." But Daniel seemed different. He respected boundaries, never pressured me for anything inappropriate, and even called Gloria Ma during visits. Slowly, he won her over, enough that she finally smiled and said, "If you love him, I'll support you." And so she did. 2 years later, when Daniel proposed under the orange glow of sunset during a vacation in Calabar, Gloria was the first person I called. Her scream over the phone still rings in my ears. She threw me the most beautiful engagement party, even flew in a few of Daniel's friends from the UK. That day, watching her dance in a gold-laced dress, I couldn't help but wonder what her wedding would have looked like if life hadn't been so cruel. But she smiled through it all, happy for me, proud of me. I didn't know it then, but part of her was quietly preparing for a life completely alone. After our wedding, I relocated to London with Daniel. It was a whirlwind of adjustment, new weather, a different culture, and being away from the only person who had ever truly been family. Gloria called every other day, her voice filling the spaces the city left empty. For a while, things were good. But somewhere between the cold winters and quiet dinners, a chill crept into my marriage. I began to notice Daniel's emotional distance. He became frequently absent, claiming emergency surgeries and late shifts. Sometimes he wouldn't come home for 2 days straight. When I confronted him, he'd laugh and kiss my forehead, saying I was just being Nigerian dramatic. But I knew something was off. Then came the real blow, our struggles with conception. Month after month, year after year, I watched as pregnancy tests mocked me with single lines. I saw the strain in Daniel's eyes, the unspoken disappointment. We tried IVF twice. Both failed. He began to sleep in the guest room. Soon, we were strangers under one roof, bound not by love, but by a silence that screamed louder than words. Meanwhile, back home, Gloria was fighting her own battles. The loneliness was thick, but she didn't show it. Her career was thriving, but she was now 38, and still without companionship. She turned down every man that came close, brushing them off with cool politeness. She focused on charity work, led corporate seminars, and built a reputation as the woman who had it all, except love. And even that image was threatened when a scandal broke out at her workplace. A junior staff member, one she had disciplined for negligence, accused her of harassment. It was clearly false, but in a male-dominated industry, the damage spread quickly. Anonymous blogs picked it up. Meetings became tense. Her boss, Mr. Eek, called her in and offered to make the issue go away if she'd accompany him for a weekend conference in Dubai, alone. Gloria left the office that day with trembling hands and rage boiling in her throat. She told no one, not even me. While I was drowning in silence in a foreign country, she was battling betrayal in her own land. Still, we both wore brave faces when we called each other, pretending things were fine, hiding our pain to protect the other. Until the day the world shifted again, and this time, it shifted for good. The day I found out I was pregnant felt surreal. I remember clutching the test stick in disbelief, staring at the two bold lines that had mocked me as one for 5 long years. I dropped to my knees and cried, not just because of the joy, but because I had stopped believing this moment would ever come. Daniel, however, wasn't home. He was on call again. I sent him a message and waited. Hours passed. When he finally replied, all he said was, "We'll talk when I get back." The man I once adored didn't even call. I should have known then that something was irreversibly broken between us. Still, I chose to celebrate this miracle rather than focus on his coldness. And the first person I called wasn't my husband. It was Gloria. She screamed through the phone, crying louder than I was. "God has remembered you, my baby," she whispered, and I could feel her joy ripple through the receiver. That call rekindled something between us. I asked her to start making plans for a visit once the baby arrived. I told her London had missed her energy, and honestly, so had I. She chuckled softly and said, "Maybe it's time I took a real vacation." Gloria arrived in London 3 weeks after my son was born. When I saw her walk through Heathrow arrivals, elegant in her wine coat and black boots, my chest swelled with pride. Even after all the emotional bruises, she still moved with grace, dignified, calm, and glowing. She held my baby like he was royalty, tears filling her eyes. It was the first time I had seen her cry in years. That night, we sat on the balcony wrapped in sweaters, sipping tea, and catching up. I noticed a gentleness in her voice I hadn't heard in a long time. "This place is so peaceful," she said. "I can finally hear myself think." The next day, she accompanied me to church for a dedication service. That was where she met Michael. He was part of the pastoral committee and had come to congratulate us after the service. Michael was tall, dark, and refined. He spoke with a depth that made you listen, even when he was silent. I noticed the way his eyes lingered on Gloria, not in a lustful way, but in quiet admiration. She barely gave him more than a courteous smile that day, but fate had already rolled the dice. Over the next few weeks, Michael kept finding reasons to drop by. He claimed he was bringing groceries for the baby or books for me to read during nursing. But it became obvious he wanted to see Gloria. She, of course, was skeptical. "These London men too act holy," she muttered one morning, laughing as she folded baby clothes. But I saw something softening in her. She smiled more, walked with a new lightness, and sometimes hummed when she thought I wasn't listening. One Sunday afternoon, Michael invited us all to dinner. His 2 grown daughters joined us. They were polite but guarded. One of them, Ada, a law student, later pulled Gloria aside. "We've seen women try to use our dad," she said, her tone sharp. "He's kind, but don't mistake that for weakness." Gloria said nothing. But when we got home, I saw her hands tremble slightly as she reached for her scarf. "Maybe love is just not my thing," she whispered. Yet despite her doubts, she kept seeing Michael. He didn't rush her. He was patient, careful, and attentive. Slowly, he drew her out of her shell, brick by brick. But in the quiet corners of her heart, Gloria still feared it would all come crashing down again. After all, men had a way of showing you heaven before slamming the gates in your face. Just when Gloria began to let her guard down, life reminded her that the past has claws. Michael vanished for 4 whole days. No calls, no texts. Gloria tried to appear calm, but I knew her too well. She barely touched her food, paced the living room in silence, and often sat by the window like a woman waiting for a ship that might never dock. When he finally returned, it was without fanfare, just a knock on the door on a rainy Thursday night. He stood there soaked, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Gloria didn't move. I watched the storm inside her eyes collide with the one outside our window. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "I can't do this again, Michael. I've been lied to too many times." That's when he dropped to his knees and told her everything. Years ago, before he gave his life to Christ, he had fallen for a Nigerian woman during a business trip to Abuja. She had pretended to be pregnant, blackmailed him into funding a fake miscarriage and then disappeared. His daughters had witnessed the breakdown, and since then, he had vowed never to date a Nigerian woman again. Meeting Gloria had changed that, but when his daughters raised concerns, he panicked and fled. It wasn't an excuse, but it was his truth. Gloria wept silently as he spoke, not from anger, but from the exhausting weight of always having to prove herself worthy of love. That night, she told him to give her space, and for once, he respected her request. While Gloria was nursing the wounds of that confession, my marriage was silently collapsing beneath me. Daniel had become more distant than ever. Even with a newborn in the house, he barely touched the baby or asked how I was doing. I found myself parenting alone, while he came and went like a tenant. Then one day, while sorting laundry, I found an envelope tucked inside his jacket. It was a letter, old but carefully preserved, written by a woman named Sophie. In it, she wrote about their broken engagement, how Daniel had run off after she was diagnosed with reproductive complications. The tone was bitter but heartfelt, a woman scorned by a man who had once promised her forever. My hands trembled as I read it. Was I just a replacement? A redemption project? The next day, I searched his phone and found flirtatious messages to a woman saved as Faye. Her voice notes were explicit, and her words too familiar. When I confronted Daniel, he didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at me with dead eyes and said, "I married you out of guilt. I thought I could love you, but I never stopped loving her." I felt the room spin. The man I had loved, fought for, and waited to build a life with had only seen me as penance for a past mistake. He packed a bag that night and left. Just like that. No remorse. No apology. I called Gloria, and all I could manage was, "He's gone." She said nothing for a moment. Then, "I'm coming home." But before she could return to Nigeria, something shifted again. A new light flickered in the darkness. Back in Lagos, the scandal at Gloria's office finally burst wide open. The junior staff who had accused her confessed under pressure. It was a setup orchestrated by Mr. Eek, who had been under investigation for embezzlement. The confession was recorded and leaked, and within days, the narrative flipped. Gloria was not only cleared of wrongdoing, she became a hero. The company's board issued a public apology and offered her a prestigious position in their international branch, in London. It was poetic. Life had taken so much from her in Nigeria, only to lead her back to the very city where love, healing, and family had found her. But still, she hesitated. Was Michael truly ready for her? Could she trust this life that was finally unfolding in her favor? The day she accepted the job offer, she stood at my balcony, looking out at the cold streets below. "I've always believed I was cursed," she whispered. "But maybe, just maybe, I was being preserved." As she spoke, my son giggled from his cradle, the only sound in the quiet room. And that night, as snow began to fall gently outside, Michael returned. This time not with flowers, but with a heart wide open. He stood in the doorway and said, "I've made mistakes, Gloria. But if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's this. I don't want to face another day without you." The day Michael proposed was unlike anything Gloria had ever experienced. Unpredictable, intimate, and filled with quiet magic. It happened one chilly evening in January. Michael had invited us to what he called a family dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant nestled in a quiet corner of South London. The place was warm, candlelit, and almost too beautiful to be a coincidence. As we stepped in, Gloria froze. Her favorite flowers, white lilies, lined the table, and soft instrumental music played in the background. I noticed a few familiar faces, Michael's daughters, their expressions gentler than before, some members of our church group, even Gloria's colleague from the oil firm. She turned to me in confusion, but I simply smiled. As dessert was served, Michael stood up, tapped his glass, and began to speak. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. "I've loved before," he said, "but never like this. Never with this kind of peace, this kind of fear, this kind of hope." He turned to Gloria and dropped to one knee. The entire room fell silent. "Gloria, you brought color back into my life. You restored laughter in our home. And I know we've both been through storms, but I believe we were meant to be the calm after each other's." He held out a simple, elegant ring. Her hand flew to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, barely audible. Then louder, "Yes." The room erupted in applause. Michael's daughters hugged her tightly, and Ada whispered, "We just wanted to be sure." And now we are. The wedding followed a month later. It wasn't lavish, but it was everything Gloria had ever dreamed of. The ceremony took place at a glass-roofed chapel, surrounded by winter trees dusted in snow. I stood beside her as matron of honor, watching my sister walk down the aisle in a satin ivory gown, her joy so radiant it almost outshone the day itself. Michael's eyes never left her, and the way he looked at her, like she was the sunrise he'd waited a lifetime for, made every woman in the room believe in love again. During the vows, there wasn't a dry eye in sight. Gloria's voice broke as she said, I used to think love was a punishment I'd never escape. But now I know, it's a promise that never dies, even if it takes years to find. I sang for the first time since Daniel left, a soft gospel ballad that brought the whole room to tears. And to everyone's shock, Daniel himself was there, seated quietly in the back. He didn't speak to anyone, just watched the ceremony from a distance. When our eyes met, he gave a sad, brief smile. I understood then. He knew what he had lost, what he had broken beyond repair. Gloria never even looked his way. Her eyes were on Michael, her future. When the ceremony ended, we danced under fairy lights, surrounded by people who had become our family. It was the wedding of healing, of new beginnings, of overdue joy. After the wedding, Gloria and Michael started a charity foundation for African women in the diaspora, especially those who had been emotionally wounded, exploited, or abandoned. They named it Second Spring, a nod to the season in which they met and bloomed. The foundation quickly gained traction, offering counseling, housing, and scholarships for women like the ones Gloria had once been. As for me, I was slowly beginning to breathe again. Being a single mother wasn't easy, but I found strength I didn't know I had. And with Gloria by my side, I never felt alone. She often said, "We made it, Faith. We came through the fire and didn't burn." One evening, we sat curled under blankets by the fireplace, my son asleep between us, his soft snores like music. Gloria reached for my hand and whispered, "Do you think love waited for me, or did I just stop running from it?" I smiled and answered, "Maybe it did both." Because that was the truth. Sometimes love comes early, loud, and bright. Other times, it arrives late, quiet, careful, and right on time. And in the case of my sister, it came at 40, but when it did, it brought everything with it: healing, purpose, and a kind of joy that no longer asked for permission. Thank you for watching Blackman Folktales. Please kindly subscribe to our channel.